Julia's there.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
All right, we have everybody.
Yes.
All right, looks good. Everybody ready to go?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, if Steve Leary didn't want to stay on, he could probably just give us co-host.
Okay, yep. So,
ability.
sorry, I'll just make Sue and Dave the co-host for the meeting. Okay, all right.
Yep, that way you don't have to stay on, Steve, if you don't want to.
thank you, Steve. Sue, as he does that, are you good to start?
I think, yeah, you're good.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to call this April 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Ordinance and Rules Committee to order. Clerk Semino, could we have a roll call?
Councilor Rodriguez,
Here.
Councilor Sasha,
Here.
Councilor Flaherty,
Here.
Councilor Mackin.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I would look for an approval of minutes from our March 11th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes from March
11th, 2020.
March 20th.
I have a motion by Mr. Sasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilor Flaherty. It will have to be a roll call vote because we are on the Zoom meeting. Clerk Semino?
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Aye.
Councilor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councilor Mackin.
Aye.
All in favor.
That's a 4-0 vote. Thank you very much, Clerk Semino. We'll be moving on to old business, which is 00220 from the Council President. That is to our town council rules or taking up any action relative thereto. This is done every couple of years based on Rule 56, which is the adoption of rules. At our last full council meeting, obviously we had a variety of ordinance and rules meetings about this. At our last Zoom sort of council meeting, we invoked one of the council rules that allows us to suspend any council rule because we were pushing up on our deadline. The council was unanimous in allowing that suspension of the rule, so we sort of bought ourselves a little more time. I think obviously we would have been ready, but with the COVID-19 issues sort of presenting themselves as we were wrapping up our meetings, kind of put us in a tough spot. Myself and Clerk Semino had been reviewing everything. We had gotten through all the rules. We had made a lot of changes. We did a lot of work on this, so thank you all for your efforts on this. But we had never officially taken a favorable vote. We had said we were all good with what was put together, but we hadn't taken that official vote yet. So really the purpose of this meeting is to take one last gander at these rules, and then hopefully have some sort of a vote for the full council. The one thing I would note is in your documents, you should have received a letter or some notes, and those are from Councilor O'Brien. There's a couple of rules that he noted that he'd like to see some changes on. That's something that we could entertain tonight if we wanted, or we could approve the work that we've already done, send it to the full council, and allow Councilor O'Brien to sort of speak on what he wants to see done at the full council meeting, because obviously We're just the initial committee. The full council is going to hear this, and the full council can make amendments and changes as they see fit. So I would kind of open it to the floor, whether we want to look at any of Councilor O'Brien's ideas and thoughts today, or whether we just want to move forward with the work we've done and let him address it at the full council. So I would just turn to each of you, I guess, Councilor Shasa.
I would just note that some of them are more clerical and housekeeping than substantive, and we don't need to have the whole council debate those little word changes. We might as well go through those.
That's what after I heard from you, that was going to be my recommendation, is that there are some things that me and Clerk Semino actually looked at, which are sort of little phrases in here and there. Councilor Mackin?
I did look through what he sent for your second suggestion. You know, some of the stuff, like Councilor Sash said, some were small, but his thoughts, such as not agreeing with our recommended budget reduction and stuff, I think he can make that case on his own to the full council. There could be a discussion. I don't think we have to go into that here. Just present what we've done.
Councilor Flaherty?
I agree with what Councilor Mackin said about the
More substantive change.
funding business. I think that he should defend that himself. We were around agreement, actually,
Correct.
on that point. He has some are definitely little tiny things that we should just clear up out of the way.
Sure.
He must have gone through it with great care to have arrived at such small but not unimportant items to change.
I would agree with you. Yep. All right. So with that, oh yeah, I'm sorry.
The last thing is that he's asking for some changes concerning the pre-filing of town council business, which is different from the funding issue, more substantive than a word change. And I think, if we want to leave that for the full council to discuss, that's fine.
Okay.
We just haven't addressed it yet.
Okay, perfect. All right. So I think starting with the document that Councilor O'Brien sent over, the first thing he looked to address was Rule 4. And basically what Councilor O'Brien had said in his letter is that he found it to be somewhat confusing. And this is the rule when Rule 4 is about the substitute chair. So we talked about this if the president, for some reason, wanted someone else to chair a particular topic, they could do that. But then the president would obviously not be giving up their seat for their ability to vote and be involved in the meeting. They're just allowing someone else to chair the meeting. And we had sort of added some language in terms of in the presence of the substitute chair. Councilor O'Brien found that to be confusing. So I did review it, and I'll open it up to members of this board. I've reread it. I think I saw what we were trying to do, and it makes sense to me. But I'm willing to hear what others wanted to say about that, if there was any sort of recommendations. And you don't have to hit the button. You can just raise your hand and I'll call on you. Councilor Flaherty?
To me, honestly, it seems clear.
Okay.
That's my perspective.
Councilor Shasha?
I actually thought his question was far more confusing than the text.
Fair. Councilor Mackin, you blacked out. Do you have anything to add?
Oh, no. So that was looking at the document. I guess it blacks out your camera. I didn't know that. I second Councilor Sasha.
Okay, so basically we are all in agreement at this point that the way we changed Rule 4, we understand what it says, and we can talk about it in the full council. Good?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yep.
All right. Looking at his next recommendation was as to Rule 15. And that is, Rule 15 is as to voting. And we actually talked a lot about this. If you remember, Councilor O'Brien notes that we added the option of present, which is he was appreciative of. But we had changed it to kind of put it like yes or no, abstain or present. And this was a conversation we actually had, is that he liked it in the more formal aye and or nay. So myself and Clerk Semino spoke about this. We're fine with sort of adding in that yes/I, no/nay. I think we were all just trying to make it a little more plain language. And again, I don't bring this up to the board. You can raise your hand.
I'm fine with just adding that.
Okay, Councilor Mackin's fine. Councilor Flaherty, I saw your hand up.
Well, I mean, it seems like he's asking us to particularly define everything that means yes and everything that means no, so that it's clear. And I think in our last conversation, we concluded that it was not necessary, but I guess he feels differently. It's okay with me. We'd have to have like all the yes, I, or yay, or no, or nay. And am I forgetting anything?
I think I think that covers it. I can't think of, Robert's rules usually use ayes and nays. It seems like we could do that if we needed. Councilor Shasha, I saw your hand is up.
My recollection was the same, that we ended up shrinking the list rather than including everything because we didn't want to spell out each one. And we had talked at one point about using affirmative or negative as opposed to the actual words. And I might prefer something like that, but I'm fine with leaving it the way it is or editing it the way that he wants, and we can have a discussion with the council. It really is not that big of a deal.
It isn't. Clerk Semino, do you have any sort of things you'd like to add on that?
No, I mean, I think we were just trying to simplify it, leaving it as yes and no, because there are so many ways of actually saying yes or no. I'm okay with adding his A/yes, nay/no, just to, kind of.
So would that be the will of the board? We'll add the A and the nay in.
I say yes, just to anticipate something down the road.
Okay. Councilor Shasha?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we add that, do we add I, yay? Because we do kind of use them all.
Yeah. So do you want to, would your suggestion be yes/I, yes/I/yay? And for no, no/nay?
I think that would be better to me.
Okay.
What if instead of particularly defining the terms that you can use to mean yes, we said you can vote in the affirmative or in the negative, and then you can also vote present
Or abstain or present.
or abstain. So then people, I guess it leaves a certain amount of latitude for people to answer as they wish.
Mhm.
And it sort of defines yes and defines no without specifically defining the term for yes and the term for no.
I'm fine with that as well.
I'm okay with that. I mean, they're all pretty clear one way or the other.
Yeah.
Councilor
I
Shasha,
agree.
you okay
I
with
agree.
affirmative? Clerk Semino, you don't see any issues with affirmative, negative? Okay.
No, other than I'm sure we'll have Council O'Brien then come back.
Well, we'll deal with, all right, so
Further discussion.
sure. So I think for us tonight, from coming forth tomorrow, we'll put, maybe vote either in the affirmative, in the negative, or abstain, or present. And that would be under Rule 15.
I think that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Moving on to Rule 33 and or Rule 34.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman,
Councilor Shasha.
do we want to address Rule 19? Because he has that in with Rule 15 as possible conflict, because that one specifies yay or nay, but.
Yeah, let me just look at that.
Want to just do the same thing for both of them?
I just got to flip back. I'm sorry. Rule 15. And what does it conflict with?
Rule 19.
Yeah. So I think correct. So Clerk Semino, as to Rule 19, I think we should word it the same way. So in the affirmative, in the negative, present or abstain.
Where the rule is just asking for, it's just saying that anybody who wants to insist on a roll call vote can insist on a roll call vote. So you don't actually have to define the yays or the nays. You can just say, upon demand of any member, the roll a roll call vote shall be called.
Yeah,
Prior,
Yeah,
you can
that's
just
true.
that's fine. Yep, you're correct. So could you just repeat that one more time, Councilor Flaherty?
Upon demand of any member, a roll call vote shall be made prior to president or chair reading results into the record upon any question before the council.
Sure. Any issues with that, anyone? Okay, perfect. All right, so that would then take us to the Rule 3334, which is the agenda requests from other town departments, and then the rule that we added in, agenda requests from council members. These are two rules that I think we spent a good chunk of time on. And his argument here kind of goes into this Rule 59, the pre-filing rule that he'd like to add. And I think, like Councilor Flaherty said at the outset of this meeting, Rule 59 is a pretty substantive thing. It's something he wrote up on his own. I'm not necessarily for or against it, but where it's sort of his introduction of a measure, I think it might be more appropriate for us just to hold back on that and let him bring that into the full council when we bring it to the full council.
Yeah.
Councilor Mackin, you're okay with that? Councilor Flaherty?
Okay.
Okay. Councilor Shasha?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we'll hold off on that 34, 30.
Mr. Chairman, I think Sue has a question.
Clerk Semino?
Just because it can get confusing. He numbered his Rule 59, but it's actually not 59. It would be 66 at this point if it's the ending one.
So how we got Councilor O'Brien's new rule.
Yeah,
So we can just leave that off and he can bring it up later.
exactly. Okay. Okay.
Then he moves on. Oh, sorry.
Before we have to bring it up, in order to make the council meeting more productive, in reading his suggested language, it seems to me like he's got two substantially different rules packed into one suggestion. One has to do with adding, providing information that every motion or request has to have all the necessary information well in advance. And then the other part of it is more like it has to do with preventing council from sliding something in at the last moment before a new council is seated. And so, I mean, is it, instead of having that conversation at the full council, ask him to parse that more carefully and then bring it back to the council? Or should we just ask him to do the whole discussion with the full council?
I think what I'll do is after our vote tonight, I'll reach out to him because he had forwarded this to myself as the chair, and I had Clerk Semino provided to y'all. But I'll just say to him, hey, we discussed this in the O&R meeting. We wanted to make sure that it's something substantive. It's something that you wanted to bring up. But I think I would note to him, like, you may want to break this down a little bit because I just don't want to be, it's his proposal. So I don't feel comfortable like trying to break down someone else's proposal into what they're trying to get. So to me, I would just have him sort of work it out and then have us as a full 9 sort of debate it.
Okay.
Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. So moving to Rule 52, which is permission to address the chair, which we actually did a lot of discussion on. And he had a question, doesn't that conflict with Rule 35? And I read both of them a couple times again. I know Clerk Semino went over them as well. I don't see any conflict. I think they're two completely separate rules. I don't know if anyone views it differently. And I'd hear from any of y'all I'll go the reverse order this time. Councilor Shasta, anything on that?
No, I agree. They're two separate circumstances and they can have different rules.
Correct. Councilor Flaherty, anything on that?
No, I don't have anything to add on that.
Okay. Councilor Mackin?
Oh, I agree with y'all.
Sorry. So again, he can bring that up, and I just don't. I think they're completely separate issues personally. But again, it's something any member of the council can make amendments or changes, and we can talk about it at the full council meeting. Rule 56. I looked at the rule, and I actually, I would agree with this, and this is, I think, a change we could make. We just wrote 2 days. I think 2 business days makes sense if no one has any issue with that.
I actually had a question more broadly. Sure. Clerk Semino, will you be able to meet that requirement on a holiday weekend? Which just occurred to me, right? If there was a Tuesday meeting after a holiday, you would then have to have everything in by Thursday instead of Friday?
That's
Is
true.
that typically what you do?
Yes.
Okay, so that should be fine then.
Okay. Councilor Flaherty, anything on that?
No, it's fine. 2
Councilor
business.
Mack? Good to go. All right. Moving on to Rule 59, which is not going to be Rule 59, correct, Clerk Semino? Oh, no, this is the publication. I'm sorry, right.
This is correct, 59.
So this is sort of a, and I think myself and Clerk Semino had a little discussion about this. This is just a change that is possible in terms of how we publish things. There's been recommendations from the Attorney General's office over the last year or so about how you sort of physically post meetings, and I think that's what he's sort of addressing here. Clerk Semino, did you want to sort of give any insight on how you're posting and sort of your feelings on this, because it kind of falls to you?
Well, just for first numbers, right now, our budget for advertising is $17,800. We currently have available $8,800. So we'll probably use another 1,000 or so in advertising with the budget coming up. And that's pretty much it for the fiscal year. We usually use about 8,000, 7,000 we have left over, and we give it back, and that goes back to free cash. So posting, we post the meeting notices. We have to post the legal notices in the Patriot Ledger, and that's where that advertising money is used for. And we're saying that, there are still a lot of people who do read the newspaper, and you really do still want to be transparent and have it there when we're having these public hearings. So just something to talk about.
Does anyone want to weigh in on that?
I mean, it's very appealing to save a little bit of money.
Yeah.
I won't deny that. I guess I have no information. I know people do still read the newspaper, and it's generational, right? Like, I would be far more likely to look at the website than I would to look it up in the newspaper, even though I have subscriptions to those to the Patriot Ledger, for example. But I mean, is there any data on how people get their information on this now? I don't want us to spend money on something that's not being used, but I do want to spend the money if it is being used, and I don't know how to tell whether it's being used or not. Mm-hmm. So to be on the safe side, I would continue spending the money, but I can see an argument for making a change at some point.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Shasha?
I think that regardless of if we were to consider something like this, it would only be appropriate to do it as an individual rule change, maybe combined with a town-wide effort to change notifications. Doing it in the context of changing 66 rules where the public isn't really aware does not seem like a good idea.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Mackin?
I don't think just suddenly doing it. I like Councilor Flaherty's suggestion. I mean, in the future, maybe if it worked out, but I think we need more to go on.
And And I'd agree with all of that. I think obviously budget-wise, we're going to see how COVID sort of affects our budgets going forward. Saving money for the town is always a plus. But I think Council Flaherty nailed it on the head. We don't have the data in front of us. I know some of the older generation, like I go to the Facebook pages, I personally go to web pages, but I know there are people that still go to the papers, and we dealt with a lot of things last year where people thought things are not transparent. So I'd be worried about, similar to what Councilor Shasha said, changing it in this vehicle. I think if we're going to change how we post meetings, it should be sort of a town-wide thing, not something that we do in a subcommittee meeting. So I just would be uncomfortable sort of trying to make that change in this medium. So if everyone's okay with, I would just kind of like to leave it the way we had it, and we can address that at the full council if need be. Everyone okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to Rule 63. This was we put in a little bit of language here. This is about the authorization to sign various bills, and we added in that sentence, in a time-sensitive manner, clerk of the council may sign on behalf of the council president upon review. And he found the upon review to be confusing. When I reviewed it, I kind of agreed with him. I didn't really see why we put the upon review there. So I'd be fine with taking out the two words upon review. So it would just end in a time-sensitive matter, clerk of the council may sign on behalf of the council president. And I'd open it up to you folks. Councilor Flaherty?
Well, honestly, I can't remember who we thought was going to review it.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense to me to remove it. I guess I would never question Sue Semino's judgment on whether it was needed for time-sensitive purposes to sign off on something. I guess we have to consider, what if we had somebody far, far worse than Sue Semino, than Clerk Semino. So I guess that would be my thought. Do we give the clerk of the council total freedom to sign off on things? And as long as they, in their opinion, it's a time-sensitive issue, or do we assign somebody to make that decision for them? That's what it comes down to.
Councilor Shasha, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay. No. Councilor Mackin, anything on this one?
I think we leave as is, but that's just me.
You want to leave the upon review word there? Okay. Councilor Semino, could you expound on a little bit on when this comes up?
Yeah, there's really only a couple times that this happens. It's when I do the bills or when I do the payroll. Mm-hmm. And I would sign the council president's name along with my own name in order to get it submitted to the accounting department and treasurers, so they can get the payroll moving and they can get the bills sent out. There's only, it's Tuesdays and Wednesdays that they, that's their last day for submittal, and we only see, council every 2 weeks if we're lucky. Mm-hmm. There are times where there's council presidents that can come in during the day and sign documents, and when that happens, that's great. Mm-hmm. But what I do is then I will keep a copy of what I signed, and I'll also have a copy without a signature, and I'll have the council president sign that, and we'll submit that as the council president's original signature as well, and then send that to treasurers and in the accounting department, so that they have the knowledge that yes, that council president did okay use funds.
Okay, so this is more just like, it's almost, you're just temporarily signing the check until the council can get there. Yeah. Anything, Councilor Shasha?
I was going to, so should we just clarify those two words instead of removing them or leaving them in? Say something like subject to approval subject to review by the president of the council at his or her convenience. So that way they have review of it, but whenever they can do it.
Would that make sense, Clerk Semino, from what the situations you're describing?
Yeah, it just seemed a little wordy. I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
in it. Well, it does say the sentence above that, authorized to sign such document subject to the
Same restrictions.
time sensitive manner. On behalf of the council president. Yeah, because we know what we were trying to say when we said a review.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if you?
What if we said just subject to the same restrictions again? In a time sensitive manner, clerk of the council may sign on the behalf of the council president, subject to same restrictions. Because it's only in those instances where you can't get the president or the vice president in, so it seems somewhat limited.
Yep.
It's all right with me.
Councilor Shasha or Flaherty?
I could go either way on this one. I really, it's, does anybody feel the need to spell out that if a non-council member ends up signing the checks, that they be reviewed? I'm fine with what you just said, not specifying the review process.
Yeah, subject to same restrictions.
Yeah.
Councilor Flaherty?
I think the simplest thing to do is to take out upon review.
Okay. I'm open to either. I was fine with taking a review. I'm fine with subject matter to same restrictions. So I guess.
Which restrictions though? Like it says subject to the same restrictions, but it doesn't, I can't see what the identified restrictions are in the rule.
Correct.
President of the council is authorized to sign bills, vouchers, payrolls, and similar documents pertaining to the expenditures under the jurisdiction of the town council on behalf of the town council. And then it says, if the council president's not available, then the vice president can do it under the same restrictions. The restrictions are not identified.
I think the restrictions is that they're only allowed to sign for bills, vouchers, payrolls, and documents related to the jurisdiction of the town council. I think that's what the restriction is. They can't be signing off on other things. It's just those things under the jurisdiction of the town council.
Okay, I assumed that the such documents meant, it says such documents subject to the restrictions.
That's my reading of it and the way I've read it in the past.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then if we want to add subject to the same restrictions, that's fine.
Okay. Everyone's okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And then the last one, which might be perfect, I think we let him argue to the full council. Rule 65, we had a lot of discussion about this, about that, how much that amount that a reimbursement for various things would be. And I think that we all, through that debate, came to $1,000 was sort of okay. Councilor Bryan is hopeful from his statement here that he wants to keep it at 2,500. I think we had a full debate, and I'm fine with keeping it at the 1,000 that we all decided upon. And I think, in my personal opinion, especially again, like I just said a couple minutes ago, we don't know how COVID is going to affect other parts of the budget. And, not that everyone uses it, but at 1,000, that's $9,000. At, 2,500, that's significantly more. So I think $1,000, given the times, is appropriate, and I'd open that up to anyone here. Councilor Shasha.
Well, I was just going to say, before the meeting, before I read Councilor O'Brien's notes, I was thinking about coming in and asking whether we should reconsider dropping it to 0, but I'm not going to do that. But I do have a question. Did we ever discuss the possibility of having all of those expenses under Rule 65 published with the agendas so that the public gets a view of them. I can't remember if I brought that. We did not. Okay. Because I was thinking about that. It, you know, even at $1,000, there's no transparency into what that money is being spent on. Like if I decided that I needed a solid gold pen to sign all of my documents, I could do that, right? And nobody would know that I did. That seems a little.
Yeah, I'm not going to sign off on that. You're not going to get reimbursed for that. We do, the council president and I do question when people do submit documents. There has been one that was rejected from Councilor O'Brien this year. I won't get into it, but.
Okay. So I think, I mean, and we can leave it for the full council. I think there's some merit to having whatever our expenditures are being part of the public record.
Okay. Do you guys want to leave that sort of debate to the full council?
Is that,
Larry?
do we need to add that to the rules? Would that be a separate rule or included in that rule?
I mean, I guess it could be part of that rule. It's something I've never thought of. It's not a bad. I don't have anything against it. It's just never come into my thought process.
No, I don't disagree with it either, but you'd have to be more specific with it, like where exactly would it be published, when.
And Councilor Sasha, if you wanted to expand on that idea, that's something you could, again, just because you vote in the affirmative or the negative tonight, you're always allowed to make an amendment at the full meeting if you want to try to flesh that out a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
I like the idea behind it, though. It makes sense.
Okay. All right.
All right.
And that would wrap up the ideas that Councilor O'Brien put up, and I think we addressed the ones that we could or should have, and there's some that he can bring up, and I'm sure other councilors may have things that they're going to obviously want to amend or address. So we'll deal with those. The full council will deal with those. But in terms of what we've done, does anyone have any other questions or comments, or are we sort of looking pretty good to go? Councilor Sasha?
I think we're pretty good.
Councilor Flaherty?
I am totally satisfied.
Councilor Mackin?
Vote.
Okay. So I would love to have a vote tonight, so we can get some sort of action on it, favorable. I'm assuming favorable. So I would ask someone to make a motion, and Clerk Semino, you could help me on this, that we approve these new Braintree Town Council rules of 2020 with the changes that we discussed tonight. So could I have that motion from someone? You can just say so moved.
So moved.
I have the motion by Councilor Sasha. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Flaherty. Again, as we are in this sort of Zoom meeting, it has to be a roll call vote. So Clerk Semino?
Councilor Rigas?
Aye.
Councilor Sasha?
Aye.
Councilor Flaherty?
Aye.
Councilor Mackin?
Yay.
That is 4 in favor.
So that is unanimous. So thank you guys for all your work on this. I know this was sort of, like I said at the outset of it, this wasn't the most exciting thing to go through, but I think like you saw, it's important because it's how we sort of govern ourselves. Before we wrap up, let's look at the agenda here. The new business that we have on the agenda is 20034, Councilor O'Brien. That's Chapter 8.800, a single-use plastic bylaw or take up any action relative thereto. We had tabled that previously. I would
I think it's illegal right now anyway, isn't it?
Well, 100%. Right now, the governor said you can't do that, so it doesn't really matter. But I would say we just continue to table that to a date in the future, if everyone's okay with that. Yep. And it's on the table, so Clerk Semino, we don't need a motion on that, correct?
No motion needed.
And before we go to adjournment, does anyone have any sort of announcements that they'd like to make? From looking at the participant list, we don't have many people involved right now, but it is being recorded, so you never know when somebody might view it. Any announcements from anyone?
No.
The only thing I would put out there, and this is for you all too, if you want to participate or share it, the COVID Community Task Force, we continue to run food and PPE drives Saturdays at Town Hall from 10 to 12. Last week, we started a sort of a kind of support various frontline workers. So last week, we collected posters and or cards for nursing home workers who have obviously been dramatically affected in their work with the COVID crisis. This week, we're going to be collecting cards and or well wishes for first responders, so police, fire, and EMS personnel. So that's something you can, it's shared on the COVID Community Task Force Facebook page. You can all feel free to share that as well or participate. And then also something I wanted to note is that we also have it was brought to our attention by James Joyce, who's a history teacher over at South. We have a World War II veteran, Joe Shiner, who lives in Braintree. Joe fought at the Battle of Normandy, so he has a distinguished service record. He is turning 100 years old on April 30th. That's a big one. But due to COVID-19, his family isn't going to be able to get together to celebrate with him. So they're asking for folks to send birthday cards over in his direction to mark this sort of momentous birthday celebration. The address is 16 Oregon Ave, Braintree. The name of his niece, whom he lives with, is Nancy Carver. So cards could be directed to Joe Shiner or Nancy Carver at 16 Oregon Avenue in Braintree. And they're also going to set up a temporary mailbox on their outside their home that you could sort of drop in your well wishes. And it's something I've shared on Facebook. You could look to my page if you wanted to sort of get some of the info, and I'll bring it up at the full council meeting as well. But it might be a great way to sort of recognize a Braintree hero turning 100. With that, if no further announcements, again, there'll have to be a roll call vote. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I have a motion by Ms. Flaherty and a second by Councilor Shash's head. Roll call vote, Clerk Semino.
Councilor Ringus,
Aye.
Councilor Sasha,
Yes.
Councilor Flaherty,
Aye.
and Councilor Mackin.
Yes.
All in favor.
All right. Thank you guys for all your work, and stay healthy.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night.
Good night.
Good night.
That out.